The Abyss, 1989, wasn't just another underwater adventure. It was James Cameron's obsession that nearly killed his entire cast and destroyed his marriage. One actress drowned on camera and had to be resuscitated.
It's like, oh my God, how are we going to do this? We couldn't be building sets in the ocean.
The crew openly mutinied against the director, and the theatrical cut wasn't remotely close to Cameron's vision. These are 16 facts about the film that became Hollywood's most dangerous production. Shot inside an unfinished nuclear reactor containment vessel in South Carolina, James Cameron chose the strangest filming location in cinema history, an abandoned nuclear power plant near Gaffney, South Carolina. The Cherokee Nuclear Station had been under construction when funding collapsed in the early 1980s. Cameron discovered the massive, unfinished containment vessel and realized it could become the world's largest underwater film tank. The concrete structure stood 55 feet deep and 210 feet across. Cameron convinced the facility's owners to let him flood it with 7.5 million gallons of filtered water. The production built the entire deep-core underwater station inside this vessel. No soundstage could accommodate Cameron's vision for full-scale underwater sets. Ed Harris punched James Cameron in the face. After filming ended, Ed Harris and James Cameron's relationship deteriorated so badly during production that Harris physically attacked the director after the final shot. Harris had endured months of grueling underwater work, repeated takes pushing safety limits, and Cameron's relentless perfectionism. On the last day, Cameron demanded one more take of an exhausting sequence. Harris snapped. He confronted Cameron about the dangerous conditions and disregard for actor safety. The argument escalated. Harris punched Cameron in the face, breaking his nose. Production assistants separated them. Harris walked off set and refused to participate in any publicity for the film. Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio had a complete nervous breakdown. During drowning scene, the sequence where Lindsay Brigman drowns and must be resuscitated pushed Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio past her psychological breaking point. The scene required her to simulate drowning while Ed Harris performed CPR. Cameron shot the sequence over 3 days with dozens of takes. Mastrantonio had to hold her breath underwater repeatedly, while cameras captured her death. Between takes, she surfaced gasping and crying. On the third day, after Cameron demanded another take, Mastrantonio surfaced, screaming at the director. She climbed out of the tank, still wearing the dive suit, and suffered what crew members described as a complete breakdown. She was hyperventilating and sobbing uncontrollably. A medic was summoned. Mastrantonio refused to get back in the water. Ed Harris actually cried, real tears, underwater, during CPR scene. During the resuscitation sequence, Ed Harris wept genuine tears while performing CPR on Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio's character. This seems impossible. Crying underwater shouldn't be visible. But Harris was so emotionally devastated by the actual production conditions that real tears formed in his eyes, even submerged. The scene became painfully authentic because Harris was releasing genuine anguish about the hellish filming experience. His raw emotion had nothing to do with acting. He was expressing months of accumulated trauma and exhaustion. Cameron recognized the authenticity and kept rolling. The scene's power comes from Harris channeling real suffering into his performance. The production had no safety divers for the first 3 weeks. Incredibly, the first 3 weeks of underwater filming proceeded without proper safety divers on standby.
I've been a diver for 18 years.
Oh,
and
so
I've
you were
spent
not
a
a
lot of
greenhorn.
time underwater, yeah.
Cameron assumed the actors' dive training was sufficient. This proved catastrophically wrong. Multiple actors experienced problems underwater with no immediate help available. Ed Harris's regulator malfunctioned during one take, cutting off his air supply. He panicked and made an emergency ascent. Michael Biehn had a similar incident. After these near drownings, the Screen Actors Guild threatened to shut down production unless Cameron hired professional safety divers. Cameron reluctantly complied, adding a team of Navy SEALs and commercial divers. These safety personnel prevented several potential deaths during subsequent filming. The initial absence of safety divers revealed Cameron's dangerous mindset. He prioritized shots over human lives. The oversight could have resulted in actual actor deaths. Only union intervention prevented tragedy. 20th Century Fox threatened to shut down production multiple times over budget. Overruns, The Abyss was budgeted at $41 million. By midpoint, costs had ballooned past $55 million. Fox executives flew to South Carolina multiple times threatening to pull the plug. Cameron's production methods were hemorrhaging money. Every underwater sequence took exponentially longer than scheduled. Equipment constantly failed in the water. Sets required extensive repairs. Cameron's perfectionism meant dozens of takes for every shot. Fox demanded Cameron finish within budget or face termination. Producer Gail Ann Hurd, Cameron's wife at the time, mediated between studio and director. She convinced Fox to continue by showing impressive footage. The final budget reached $69 million, making it one of 1989's most expensive films. Fox executives privately called it Cameron's Waterloo. They expected financial disaster. Only Cameron's reputation saved the project from cancellation. The liquid breathing sequence used a real rat-breathing oxygenated perfluorocarbon. The shocking scene showing a rat-breathing liquid is completely real. Industrial Light and Magic didn't fake it with CGI or effects. They used actual perfluorocarbon liquid developed for medical applications. The rat genuinely breathed the oxygenated fluid and survived without harm. This horrified animal rights activists when they learned about it. The production faced protests and complaints. However, the rat suffered no injury. Perfluorocarbon breathing is a legitimate medical technique. The rat was monitored by veterinarians and returned to normal breathing immediately afterward. Cameron included this controversial footage to prove the science was real, not fantasy. Audiences watching the scene believe they're seeing a visual effect. They're not. If you're enjoying these production nightmares from classic science fiction films, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss our next deep dive. We've got more dangerous filmmaking stories coming soon. Now back to Cameron's underwater hell. Michael Biehn suffered panic attacks and required therapy after production. Michael Biehn, who played Lieutenant Coffey, developed genuine psychological trauma from the Abyss production. He experienced recurring panic attacks triggered by enclosed spaces and water. Biehn had never suffered anxiety issues before this film. The months of underwater work in tight spaces while wearing restricting equipment broke something inside him. After filming Wrapped, Biehn sought professional therapy for what therapists diagnosed as production-related PTSD. The claustrophobic conditions combined with Cameron's aggressive directing style created lasting psychological damage. Biehn has spoken openly about how the Abyss affected his mental health. The water in the tank was so cold, actors lost feeling in their extremities. The 7.5 million gallons filling the containment vessel were heated, but never warm enough for extended submersion. The water temperature hovered around 40 to 50 degrees Fahrenheit. Actors spent 6 to 8 hours daily submerged in this cold water wearing thin wetsuits. They developed hypothermia symptoms regularly. Ed Harris's hands went numb during takes, making it difficult to manipulate props. Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio's lips turned blue between shots. Actors shivered uncontrollably after surfacing. Medics stood by with heated blankets and warm beverages. Cameron filmed through these conditions, believing the actors' visible discomfort added authenticity. He wasn't wrong. The cast's genuine cold-related suffering is visible throughout the film, but the human cost was significant. Several actors developed respiratory infections from prolonged cold water exposure. James Cameron and Gail Ann Hurd's marriage ended during post-production. James Cameron and producer Gail Ann Hurd were married when The Abyss began filming. Their relationship didn't survive the production stress. Cameron's obsessive perfectionism and dangerous working conditions created constant conflict. Heard tried protecting the cast while Cameron pushed for increasingly dangerous shots. She mediated between studio executives demanding budget control and Cameron's refusal to compromise. The pressure destroyed their marriage. They separated during post-production and divorced shortly after the film's release. Heard later described the production as a slow-motion disaster for their relationship. Cameron's subsequent relationships followed similar patterns. His work consumed everything. The Abyss marked the first time Cameron's filmmaking obsession directly destroyed a marriage. It wouldn't be the last. Heard moved on to successful producing without Cameron. She rarely discusses their collaboration on The Abyss publicly. Crew members wore shirts saying, "Life's abyss and then you dive." The production crew's misery was so universal that they created unofficial merchandise mocking their suffering. T-shirts appeared on set reading, "Life's abyss and then you dive," and "You can't scare me, I work for James Cameron." The shirts became crew uniforms, worn openly despite Cameron's presence. This represented unprecedented on-set rebellion. Crew members rarely publicly mocked their director during production. The shirts symbolized collective TCUO resentment toward Cameron's methods. Some crew members added their own variations. "The Abyss, a disaster of titanic proportions," grimly prophetic given Cameron's next film. When Cameron saw the shirts, he reportedly laughed but didn't order their removal. Even he recognized the production had become notorious. The shirts are now collector's items, evidence of Hollywood's most miserable shoot. Fox cut 28 minutes. From Cameron's version for theatrical release. James Cameron delivered a cut running 2 hours and 51 minutes. 20th Century Fox executives watched it and panicked. They believed audiences wouldn't sit through a nearly 3-hour underwater film. Fox demanded Cameron trim at least 30 minutes. Cameron resisted, but Fox controlled Final Cut. The studio removed 28 minutes, gutting entire subplots. Cameron's preferred version included extensive sequences showing the aliens' motivations and their plan to destroy humanity with massive tidal waves. These scenes explained why the aliens ultimately spare Earth. Without them, the theatrical release feels incomplete. The aliens' behavior seems arbitrary and confusing. Industrial Light and Magic created groundbreaking CGI water tentacle that influenced Terminator 2. The pseudopod sequence showing the water tentacle mimicking faces pioneered computer-generated imagery techniques that revolutionized visual effects. ILM supervisor Dennis Murren led the team creating this effect. They developed new software for rendering reflective liquid surfaces. The water tentacle was CGI's first truly photorealistic organic element. Previous CGI looked artificial and geometric. The pseudopod appeared genuinely liquid and alive. This breakthrough convinced James Cameron that CGI could create the liquid metal Terminator for his next film. Without the Abyss's water tentacle, the T-1000 wouldn't exist. The pseudopod sequence required 6 months of rendering time on 1989 computer systems. The film lost money, despite positive reviews and opening at number 1. The Abyss opened August 9, 1989, in first place with a solid $9.3 million weekend. Reviews were largely positive. Roger Ebert gave it 4 stars. The film seemed positioned for success. However, word of mouth was mixed. General audiences found it too long and confusing. The theatrical cut's missing context about the aliens confused viewers. Box office dropped sharply in subsequent weeks. The Abyss earned only $54 million domestically against its $69 million budget. International sales brought total returns to $90 million. After marketing costs and theater shares, Fox lost approximately $15 million. Cameron's vision had been too expensive and too compromised. The film became profitable only through home video sales. Theatrical exhibition lost money despite critical acclaim and strong opening. Alternate ending. James Cameron's original ending showed the aliens generating massive tidal waves approaching every coastal city on Earth. News broadcasts depicted global panic as 100-foot waves formed simultaneously worldwide. The waves freeze mere feet from shore, held back by alien technology. The aliens then communicate directly with all of humanity simultaneously, explaining they nearly destroyed Earth because of human violence and nuclear weapons. They show images of war, genocide, and environmental destruction back to humanity. The message: change or face extinction. The waves then recede. This ending made the aliens' motivations clear and provided genuine stakes. Fox executives found it too preachy and heavy-handed. The Abyss could have been an exciting underwater adventure with comfortable working conditions and Cameron's full vision intact. Instead, it became Hollywood's most dangerous production, traumatizing actors, destroying a marriage, and losing money despite critical praise. The real ending was cut. Real tears were cried. And nobody involved will discuss it honestly. Some depths shouldn't be explored.